Welcome to this video presentation on the standard deployment module. After this presentation, you should be able to recall the standard deployment module. This presentation will not include the processes happening before the actual movement. All coordinations, agreements, and the clearances one would need to have in advance of the deployment is not covered here. The purpose of this presentation is to give you knowledge of how a United Nations unit is normally deployed. The movement starts in your national military camp and ends when the personnel and the contingent own equipment has arrived the temporary or permanent camp in the mission. The United Nations has different deployment systems for personnel and equipment. Personnel is transported to the agreed airport and equipment to the agreed harbor. If the mission is very close, it might be possible to use only road or train. But we will in this presentation show a movement over long distance by using air and sea transportation. The equipment is loaded on a vessel and transported down to a harbor close to the mission. When arriving the harbor, the equipment is offloaded and temporarily stored in a marshalling area. UN will then contract the movement either by civilian trucks or rail from the marshalling area and down to the final destination, the temporary or permanent camp in the mission. After arriving the agreed airport close to the mission, the personnel will stay temporarily in a holding area. The United Nations will contract civilian buses or use the mission's helicopter resources for the transportation to the final destination, the temporary or permanent camp in the mission. Note that national drivers will not see or meet their vehicles before the vehicle has arrived at camp. This will impact on what we store inside our vehicles during the transportation. The first leg of the movement, from home base to airport and seaport, is normally done by national resources under letter assist with United Nations. The next leg, from national country and down to the mission area, is called the strategic movement, and that's planned and executed by the Movement Control Section in United Nations headquarters in New York. All transportation within the mission area is a tactical movement, planned and executed by the Mission Movement Control Section. The inland movement is normally done by national resources, gathering all personnel and equipment and make sure that they are present at the airport or the harbor in due time before the next movement phase, creating and issue load lists, passenger lists, etc. To make sure that not all the equipment and personnel arrives at the same time without necessary coordination in advance, the United Nations has divided deployment into an advance party and main body. The advance party is 10% of the total force. The contingent advance party will arrive 2 to 7 days prior to the scheduled arrival of the contingent own equipment. The advance party usually arrives by air together with the sufficient storage and equipment, including rations, water, and transportation assets to be self-sufficient until the arrival of the contingent own equipment. The main duties for the advance party is to prepare the ground for the arrival of the main body and to assist with the arrival of the contingent own equipment by providing specialist drivers, security, and other support as needed. Mount and operate national water treatment plants, including water testing, before the main body arrives. Here we will present the total movement, including the advance party, and look at it in a generic time view. The contingent own equipment will start moving first. Long distances at sea will take time. The advance party will deploy by air 2 to 7 days prior to the contingent own equipment arrives the temporary or permanent camp in the mission. Then the contingent own equipment has arrived the temporary or permanent camp in the mission. The main body will start their movement to the mission. The United Nations has a long experience in this kind of planning, and together with the troop of police contributors' effort, this deployment will work smoothly. The United Nations has actually 2 movement control centers, one in New York under the Department of Operational Support, and one in the missions under Director of Mission Support. They are both involved in all deployment or redeployment of troop or police contributors' personnel and equipment. It is important to be able to distinguish between these 2 sections' responsibilities. We have in this presentation introduced you to the standard deployment module. Key takeaway: the United Nations is responsible for all movement of personnel and contingent own equipment to and from the mission. Our national drivers will not see or meet their vehicles before the vehicle arrives their destination in the mission. Thank you for following this presentation.